we're starting up the professional development seminars again. For those of you who aren't familiar with the professional development seminars, there are several major tenets of our program, and one of them we think is very important for the Wyakin Warriors is the ability to continue to develop professionally, because by the time they graduate, we want them to be polished, to be experienced, to know things that a lot of their peers may not know when they go out and start to compete in the marketplace. The ultimate goal for us is to tilt the playing field as much as we can in the favor of our Wyakin Warriors. And some people may have a problem with that, but I sure don't. We want 100% employment in a career field for all of the graduates, and that's our aim. So to that end, once a month we have a professional development seminar to train them, and actually we all learn something every time we do it. And so welcome. The way we usually do this is we like to have it relatively informal, and as we go through the presentation, feel free to raise your hand, ask a question. We like it to be interactive, and we'll cut it off at a certain point so that you don't have to stay too late. Right? Before we get started, I would like to introduce a couple of people. I'll tell you a little bit of a background. Those of you who know Josh Callahan, he is now related to the gentleman I've already talked about, but at the time he wasn't related to him. His name is Jeff Anderson. He is with the state of Idaho. He has a couple of jobs within the state. One of those has to do with liquor distribution and the regulations around the liquor distribution within the state. And they look for opportunities for nonprofits to benefit, to partner with other organizations and help with what's called cause marketing. Cause marketing is the idea that you can associate a worthy cause with a worthy product, combine the two of them, and it's a win-win-win all the way around. The people who purchase the product have a good feeling knowing that they are benefiting an organization. The organization, in this case us, benefits because we actually get some funding. And then the organization that sponsors it and hosts it also benefits because they're associated with the worthy cause, and a lot of times it ends up actually being an increase in sales. So it's a pretty cool deal. And those of you, there's a couple of you that are talking about going into business. It's been an interesting case study to see how that all works. Sitting in the audience in the front row, we have Howard. Sorry, Howard. I panicked. Is Wasserstein, who is the deputy for Jeff Anderson. And Jeff is gone on a business travel. Howard is here representing the state of Idaho, and so thank you, Howard, for being here. And also Bill Breivik, and I'll be asking Bill to come up in the front here in a minute and give a little bit of his story. He is the one that's really that ran the program, and he'll be able to tell you a little bit about what all happened right around Christmas time and the end result of that. Bill, I can introduce you now. Sure.
All right, my name is Bill Breivik, and I represent Diageo. Some of our brands, Crown Royal, Captain Morgan, Smirnoff, Kettle One, and I manage as part of the Pac Northwest for that company. So to Jeff's point, we did come to the state of Idaho to ask, who can we partner with, who's a good, a solid partner that you want us to, to help with, go back to the cause marketing where we can take the strength of our brands. People know our brands, but they may not know Wyakin Warriors as much. So it's a great way on our point of sale that we put into the stores in November, December to put your logos on there so then people can find the website and then people become more aware of your organization as well. So the way it was set up during November, December with the help of the ISLD is they gave us a nice prominent display of Crown Royal at every liquor store across the state. We had the POS that was cross-merchandised with Crown Royal and the Wyakin Warriors. And for every bottle of Crown Royal that was sold, we would donate a quarter to the Wyakin Warrior Foundation. So great success for us, going back to the cause marketing. It's a win-win for everybody. And we did sell over 40,000 bottles of Crown Royal in the state between November and December. So today we're here to present a check for $10,000 to the Wyakin Warriors as a result, which is great. lottery check, yeah. So, yeah, take a little picture. Sure. Good?
How about one shaking?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Yeah, of
Wait,
course,
wait,
it's great.
Good job, you guys.
Yeah.
Wait, keep the handshake.
And I've got some for you and for Howard.
Great.
These are Wyakin Warrior coins. These are in the military, it's tradition from the military, and these are used as actually awards for doing something good for an organization. And it's a tradition that goes all the way back. It actually started in the Army, and the other services all stole the idea. And then now we've stolen the idea.
That's great, we really
That's a
appreciate it.
Wyakin Warrior card. Thank you, Bill.
Excellent, thank you very
Howard.
much.
Thank you. How about one with all
Yep.
three of us?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good, right?
Well, thank you very much.
Obviously, thank you for all your service as well. I'd be remiss if not to say that as well.
So now I'd like to introduce Kylie Troush, who will introduce our guest speaker.
I would like to introduce our speaker for tonight. His name is Bill Bartels. He's a certified financial planner, and he's a retired lieutenant colonel who served 20 years in the Marine Corps. He is a senior vice president of advisor operations. Bill leads First Command's West Division, where he's responsible for advising, training, and coordinating 175 advisors in 36 offices in 12 states. So, Bill?
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. I really am honored to be able to associate myself with the Wyakin Warriors and to be able to come here and talk about something that's really, really important across our whole country. There's two thoughts that I'm going to try to leave you with tonight. The first one is that we're in turbulent financial times, and we have the ability to impact those if we do a couple of things that are right. And if it's too dark, they'll let me know and we'll adjust the lights. But the purpose of our program tonight is to spend about 45 minutes talking about the power of planning. Those challenging financial times are listed up here on our chart. Most of the people today that start work aren't going to be in a pension type program. 40, 50 years ago, almost every company out there had a defined benefit plan where if you worked there for 20, 30, 40 years, you got a check of X. Sort of like a military retirement or something like that. Most of the companies in today's world don't have that. About 8, 9% is all that have that, and everyone else has a 401k or something you have to contribute to. And unfortunately, the contribution rates aren't what they should be. They're not nearly 100%. In many cases, they're down in the 30, 40% range. The future of Social Security is uncertain. Healthcare costs continue to rise faster than inflation. And lastly, we're living longer than ever before. So there's two choices you can make. You can say, gee, it's terrible and I'm just going to hunker down and take it on the chin. Or you can do something about it by putting a plan together to take charge of your own future. When you have productive financial behaviors, which is what we're going to talk about tonight as part of our presentation, we have a hallmark study that our company did on over 1,500 Americans that's found that those people who practice productive financial behaviors, which I'll describe in a couple minutes, it boosts their feeling of security for today and for tomorrow. It helps them pursue their long-term goals, and it gives them a feeling of success. And those feelings that they have and that optimism help them achieve lots of different goals in their lives. And in many cases, it helps all of their lives, because those of you who are in leadership positions know that finances many times affect marriages and relationship with children. And if you're having to work 2 jobs to make ends meet, you're not sure how you're going to pay the rent next month or the mortgage, it makes tension throughout your whole entire household. So what are those positive financial behaviors? Well, the first one is having a positive savings to debt ratio. And a positive savings to debt ratio means that you have maybe $10,000 in savings and you only have debt of $3,000 or $4,000. When the opposite is true, when you have $50,000 in debt and you don't have any money in the bank, you worry every month, every week, about whether or not you're gonna be able to make things work if something happens with your job. The individuals that have financial plans tend to have a much higher savings to debt ratio because they're actually planning to be successful as opposed to hoping and wishing. And we're going to talk a little bit about hoping and wishing. But the problem is in our society today, only about a third, 36% of all the Americans out there have any kind of financial plan at all. That means 2/3 don't. They're in the hope and wish stage because they don't really have a plan put together. And worse yet, 17%, or about half of those that have a plan actually update their plan on any regularity at all or at all. And those figures come from the CFP board and other places, and I can give you the information if you're interested in where that comes from. So the bottom line is, even though people know it's good to have a plan, because every study we do shows that people say, yeah, I'd really like to have a plan, much like you'd like to have a plan for exercise or a plan for your vacation. In reality, more people spend more time planning their summer vacation every year, if they take one, than they spend planning their financial future. They just simply do. They'll spend weeks searching on the internet for the best rate on a hotel and where they're going to go and the pictures of the people by the pool. But if you press them a little bit on what are you going to do for the future, a lot of times they really want to back away from that because in many cases they're afraid. So it's not that they fail to plan or plan to fail, they simply fail to plan. It takes as much energy to wish as it does to plan, said Eleanor Roosevelt. And we find as we meet with people, and you heard my bio, I'm a First Command Financial Planning, and we're the people who work with people to set a plan for them. And we find when they come into our office that when we first talk to them, sometimes over lunch or over coffee, or we get introduced to them in some social function or presentation like this, they all wish that they had a financial plan. And they talk about it a lot, but they don't ever actually get to do that. So we try to facilitate that. And the reason we do is because this is the status of our country. 77% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 3 out of every 4. There's people in this room that fit in that boat, and it's regardless of their income level. For some of our Wyakin warriors who've had terrific things happen to them, terribly terrific things that cause a change in their lives, they might be in that boat, but I don't want them to feel bad because there's people who are doctors and lawyers and dentists who make $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 a year or more that live paycheck to paycheck, and we see them every day. And the hard part is getting them to come into our office and actually talk to us so that we can start the intervention necessary. And we're going to talk about how we do that as we go forward. 4 out of 10, less than 4 out of 10, have any kind of emergency savings to take care of a financial disaster. And what that means is when they do have a disaster, because we all see those disasters, Hurricane Sandy, I've got 2 people I know personally that lost almost everything there, and they don't have the money to go forward, and they're in a shape of potentially being bankrupt before they ever get anything fixed. A death in the family, a car wreck without the right insurance, losing a job temporarily. It could be 1 of 2 jobs in a dual income family that's living real close to the margin. So one of the foundations we're going to talk about as we go forward is savings. The average credit card debt is high interest credit, even though there's very low interest rates right now, and if you went to put your money in a savings account, if you could get 1% somewhere, you'd be jumping up and down for joy, because most regular savings accounts are somewhere lower than 0.5%. But the credit cards are still charging you a whole bunch. And that's almost $16,000 worth of credit card debt is the average amount, and it's building every day. Life insurance to protect their loved ones. When we poll people, they all say they think they need somewhere between 6, the slide says 5.7, I'm rounding it to 6, and 10 times their annual income. And there's a lot of studies that show that they need somewhere between 10 and 15 times their annual income to adequately protect their family if something happens to the primary breadwinner. And in many families, it even gets worse if there's 2 breadwinners because they both need to be protected. and yet they only have about 3.6 times their annual income on average. So that's another foundation of financial planning that we need to work on. 44%, almost half of all the workers in the world today, in the richest country in the world, have less than $25,000 total between their investments and savings. And those of you, there's some young people in the room that are at the beginning stage of their financial lives, and there's some of us that are closer to the retirement stage of our life, and we certainly don't want to face retirement and hope that Social Security by itself is going to be enough to live on, and if we don't do something about that and take action, and we're going to talk about specifically how you take action. So ultimately, 4 out of 5 Americans right now, and there's some studies that show at least 90%, maybe 93%, will not have the money they need to meet their retirement needs. And I ask a question at times, and I certainly don't want to offend anyone. I ask it only in my office, but I'm going to use it in today's presentation. But any of you who've been to a Denny's or another breakfast type restaurant like an IHOP or something like that on Sunday morning, are there young 16, 17, 18-year-old girls working there, or is it a different demographic that's working there on early mornings? It's different. Who's working there?
Lots of people, 40
And older. Lots of times you'll see the 65 and 75-year-old little old ladies that are working there, and I ask them when I go there, before church sometimes, I'll say, so is this just a place where you come to socialize? And that's not the case. They're there because no one had a plan along the way as they went forward. And what our goal is, and First Command is different, most of you probably don't know us because we work predominantly with the military and federal employees. We've been around 54 years. We work with middle Americans. And we are one of the only financial planners out there that seek the opportunity to create wealth for people who start with 0 or very little and grow that over a 34-year time frame. And the reason we partnered with the Wyakin Warriors is they teach discipline, they teach responsibility. They're not just there to hand out stuff to warriors, they're there to help those warriors learn to fish as opposed to just giving them a fish. And we do the same thing at First Command. We want to help people build the positive attributes and practices and regular occurrences in their life so that they make the right decisions. So why do they not, if they all think it's a good thing, why do people not do it? We'll put up several things here, and I'm going to see if any of you agree with any of these have ever occurred to you.
Would you mind reading a few of those?
Sure. I'll wait until I have more money to invest. I don't need to worry about financial planning until I get married and start a family. I need to pay my debts off first. I don't make enough money. The market is too risky now. I'll start next week, next month, next year. It's too late. I should have done something before now. Now, I'll argue with anyone in the room that it's never too late. And starting early means tomorrow. Regardless of where you are on that age continuum in here, if you already have a plan in place, that's awesome, and you're to be congratulated. But I'm going to share with you my own personal situation. I first met First Command in 1980, and I said, one of these. I'll wait till I have more money. And we don't have children yet, so we'll wait till that happens. So I lost almost 2 years on my particular journey. And then I met them again in late 1981. And my wife and I then decided, and we're still married today, very happily, almost 33 years. We decided, well, let's not put everything on the red horse. Let's just keep half our money and see what happens. So we had $200 to invest, but we started with $100. And 20 years later, when I retired from the Marine Corps, we were able to track back, because I became a financial advisor for First Command because of what they had done for me. We were able to track back that original $100 that we didn't invest, that we did something with, we don't know what, but we didn't have it anymore, so we spent it on something, and determine exactly how much that was worth the day I retired. It was $46,000 that we were short in our deal because we hadn't started with what we could afford. And when we took that very normal returning mutual fund production and fast forwarded it to age 65, which I'm not quite there yet, we've got about 10 years more to go, it was $620,000. The decision just to only do $100 instead of $200 a month, because we're going to talk about the most important part of investing a little further in the presentation. So when I ask you today whether, if you don't have a plan, whether it's too late to start, it's never too late to start. There's always a way for us to find things in your budget, and we'll talk about that. So here's the problem with waiting. There's three parts to investing: input, rate of return, and time. So which one do people most concern themselves with?
Time.
No. Which one do people think about and talk about all the time? Rate of return. Everybody talks about, oh, you gotta get 12%, or you gotta get 19%, or buy gold, you can get 80%, you gotta do this, do that, and it's just all these different rate of returns, and we have zero control over that. We have a little bit of control on which investment we choose, but all we can control is what we put in there today, not what it's going to do in the future. There's not an automatic that you get out of that. The one we can control the most, though, is time, and I'm going to give you an example. Go ahead. Let me give you an example. And I think I have a pointer here will work. So, on this particular slide, we have two people, Lisa and Dylan. So Lisa started investing $200 a month when she was 30. And she could only invest for 10 years. So she went from 30 to 40. So $200 a month became $24,000. During that same time, Dylan couldn't find his way to invest for whatever reason, all those we saw on the front, which are all legitimate. They're all legitimate reasons that we all have. So he started at 40. And he invested $200 a month from 40 to age 65, 25 years. So he had invested $60,000. And assuming an 8% rate of return, and I'll show you the actual S&P numbers during different 20-year periods, that's a fairly conservative assessment if you keep your money in the market. Lisa made $284,000 to his $182,000, over $100,000 difference. So the thing all of us need to concern ourselves with most is time, whether we have 10 years left to invest or 40 years left to invest. Time is the most critical factor that we can do. There's another problem with waiting, and it's that time piece diminishes your rate of return in compounding interest. And in your package, when you decide you want to look at this when you get home or whatever, there's a compound interest chart, so you'll be able to play with this yourself. One side has a lump sum investment where you could say, I have $10,000 because I won something, or I sold a car and I want to invest it, and you can go down the left side and see how many years you're going to let it ride, what interest rate you think. The other side's a monthly investment. So if I invested $200, like the Lisa and Dylan example, how many years and what percentage rate would it return? And it really comes down to what you hear people talk about, if you watch Bloomberg or any of those type of things, about rate of compound interest and the rule of 72. So in the particular case that we just talked about, 8% interest return on Lisa and Dylan's account. If you divide 8 into 72, that gives you how many years it will take for your amount of money to double, and that's where the rule of 72 comes from. So the simple understanding for folks is, if it's going to, 9 times 8 is 72, I think, so 9 years is how much time it would take for her money to double. The reason Lisa's money was $100,000 more was the last double. The first 3 doubles are the same, and then she had one more double because she invested 10 years earlier than he did. So that's why her money jumped up. It's always the last one that gets you the most money. So that's the other part of waiting on the investment side. So what about timing? You hear people talking about timing the market. How many in here think now's a good time to buy gold? We hear lots of commercials on it. It's the highest it's ever been. Is that what they teach us in school, to buy high? No, I think there's some other word they use, they buy what? Buy low, okay? So if we look at this, is it a bad time to invest? Some people would argue, yeah, it's a bad time to invest for gold right now, but historically, investing in uncertain times has been a real boon to a lot of people, an effective long-term strategy. I'm going to show you how that process works. Ultimately, we want to buy low and sell high. So we're going to look at the period of, well, we're going to first look at dollar cost average, which is the method, and then we're going to look at the period of 1991 to 2010. But in this particular example of dollar cost averaging, we take a person and we have them invest $300 a month every single month. They set it up on an automatic payment of some sort, and the very first month is $6 per share. So they buy 50 shares of their investment, whatever that investment is. Could be a mutual fund, could be a stock, could be gold or silver or something like that. The market goes up, they're pretty happy. They bought, the market's going up already, goes up to $8, then $10, so they're buying less and less shares. That's kind of, when you actually talk to people, they go, well, that's a bad deal, I'd like to buy more shares. But that's not what we said on the previous slide. You need to buy low and sell high. So then the market starts going down. Goes down, back down to 8, back down to 6, back down to 4, and then all the way down to 2. How many of you are going to hang in there when it's 2? Well, not many when they're doing it themselves will hang in. They'll get out somewhere between 4 and 2. But here's where the buy low comes in. You're buying 150 shares with the same investment. Then it stays at 2, and it goes back up to 4 and goes up to 6. So what do you think the average price during this time was? Right about 6. If you add the numbers up and divide it by 10, it comes out to 6. You invested 10 investments of $300, which is $3,000. Your total shares you purchased, mainly because you bought all those shares down at the bottom, was 685. So if you sold your investment right now at the same price you started at $6, you would receive $4,110 for selling the shares. So in 10 months, you have $1,110 profit. This is what we call dollar cost averaging, and we are certainly not the company that invented it or talked about it, but it's what middle Americans can afford to do. Because most of us that started like I did as middle Americans, I started with $100. And I didn't have $10,000 to go buy stock, or I didn't have the secret tip in the locker room about, hey, buy this stock at this price and watch it double and triple in the next month. Because for all the Googles there were, anyone want to guess how many of the goggles didn't make it? Most of the goggles didn't make it. There's all kinds of them that didn't make it. Way more than actually made it. Now, if we were lucky enough to have chosen Google or Expedia or eBay or one of those, maybe we did great. But if we didn't pick that one, we picked another one, and we lumped some in there and hoped to time it, and it didn't turn out, it didn't do well. So what we believe is that you need to, go back one, sorry. If it is that our investors that we talk to, and we work with everybody, so occasionally if anyone's in here and wants to work with Todd at the end of the night and has $500,000 or $1 million they want to roll over, we can certainly accommodate you with that. But most of the people that we work with are going to start out with a plan where they figure out what fits in their budget monthly. And we're going to encourage them to stay the course over the long term and dollar cost averaging. So there's another problem with waiting, because every financial plan has 3 parts, what we're going to talk about here in a couple minutes. And the 3 parts, one of them is life insurance to protect the family during all the years when you don't have a whole bunch of money. If some of you are the primary breadwinner and you have a family with multiple children, and maybe the person who stays home to take care of the children isn't able to work full-time outside the home, if the primary breadwinner were to bite the dust, it takes a fairly significant amount of money for those children to still live the lifestyle that you wanted them to live with the surviving parent. Well, those of you, because several of you were in the military and have some military benefits, back when you're 25 years old, you have about $500,000 benefits in the military if you're a single guy. You have $400,000 servicemen's group life insurance and $100,000 in death gratuity, and that costs about $16 a month because it's term. It goes away when you leave the military. You have the opportunity to turn it into veterans group life insurance, but by the time you're 75 years old, Veterans Group Life Insurance is $1,125 a month. So most people aren't gonna keep it long enough to be at the point where they actually pass away. So we believe that you need to have a base of permanent insurance when the price doesn't change. So if you were to replace $500,000 with permanent insurance when you're 25, it'd be $224. But if you're kind of a slow learner like me, because I only put $35 into the cornerstone of insurance when I was back here at 23 years old. And I didn't really see the light till I was about 40 years old. And I had 2 children, wonderful children, and a wonderful wife who worked with special needs kids her whole life and didn't get paid very much money to do that, and took care of our kids and made sure that they were on the right path. While I was deployed all over the world for almost 8 years during my time in the Marine Corps, I waited until that time to figure out I needed to protect her before I retired and lost all those benefits. So I didn't buy it back here, I got it out here. So mine's somewhere in this category of cost to be able to protect my family that way. So you don't want to wait for those either. Now, if you're already at that age, there's other options that we can help you with to determine what fits your budget to protect you. So a lot of people say the reason I'm waiting is because I'm young and I don't really have that much money, and it'll be easier when I get older and have a family and all that kind of stuff. Well, there's several people in here that are at the young end, and there's several people over here that are in the middle end, and then there's some of us that are approaching the other end. Does it get simpler when you add a couple of children and a house payment and maybe 2 car payments and then, let me think, soccer camp and football camp and ballet shoes, and the list becomes endless. So waiting, we think that's too easy of an excuse out. We think whatever age you are now, that's the age you should start, if you don't already have a plan in place. Because it just gets harder as it goes on. We want you to establish sound financial behaviors early, because if you have them early, and I'm going to use me again as an example, they taught me at 23, you need to put part of every pay raise into your future. Keep part of it for your standard of living. And I had a very successful career that was terrifically fun throughout the Marine Corps. And some of the guys I shared with them earlier, but you're not going to meet too many people that got to do the cool stuff I got to do. 22, 23 years old, I'm running around on a huge tank, like a big ATV, shooting stuff, and running all over the desert. And I had 5 of them that belonged to me. Then I got to fly OB-10s for 6 years. Then I got to go on recruiting duty down in Salt Lake, and I actually recruited here at Boise State. I was here about every other month back in the mid-'80s, recruiting Marine officers. Then I got a transition to F-18s, and I got to fly F-18s for 4 or 5 years, and then I went off to Peterson Air Force Base to do ultra, super, duper, high spy stuff in the satellite world. It was kind of like sold to me that it was going to be like James Bond, and it was just a little different than that. You were locked in a room where nobody knew what you did, and you could never tell them, and there were no windows. And so it was neat, but I ended my career, so I got to do fun stuff. But I was successful during that time financially for the reasons that First Command, and just like the Wyakin Warriors teaches the people in their program, to learn to fish. And so what we did, the only difference between us and every other Marine couple that looked like us, we had about the same number of kids, we had about the same house, et cetera, is we never had 2 car payments. We always bought a beater wherever we went for me to drive, and we had a nicer car, usually that we had a car payment on for my wife to drive. If we could pay it off and it was still real reliable, we'd keep it for a couple more years and then trade it in, and I'd have another beater. So I was one of the few fighter pilot dudes driving the most awesome F-18 in the entire world in an orange 2-door Geo Metro driving to work. They called it the clown car. And I would just say, yep, but remember what's in my financial plan. Inside my financial plan from the very first plan, back in 1981, late 81, was when I'm 50, I want to pay cash for a Corvette. So at 48, we rolled that out of the showroom, and it's in my garage today. So it's part of the deal. So what's it take to have a financial plan? I'm talking about all these investments and all this other stuff. You gotta strike a balance. You can have a plan and a life. You just heard what my plan was. We just made sure we didn't have 2 car payments. And we didn't eat out a whole bunch, and you know, I didn't run bar tabs at the club and things of that nature. Back in those days there was a club, and you could actually buy alcohol there. Most of that's gone today, but in any case, you have to have a balance. And the balance is not 50-50, it's maybe about 20%. We believe in the 20% rule. Most people can't start there when we first meet them. But we work on pay raises and paying debt off until they get about 20% of their income. They put 5% into the insurance cornerstone, 5% into the savings cornerstone, and 10% in the investment cornerstone. We call it our 5-5-10. And we actually have charts that show, well, if you make this much money, here's what 5-5-10 is. And next year, as you get promoted and you make more money, or maybe you have 2 jobs, you pay off that other car and you decide I don't need one, we squeeze you a little bit each time. We say, what's right for you to get you to these goals? And we'll talk about goals in just a second. So the thing that's most important in making this plan work, once we sit down and do it, and we're going to talk exactly how we do that in a minute or so. Back up one, please. Yes, you have to pay yourself first. How many of you say to yourself, well, if at the end of the month I have money left, we'll do this? I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but I know there's some people in the room that probably have thought that. So what we believe is you take that out first. You pay yourself first. You set up an automatic Bancraft or a military government allotment if you're in the military or federal service. And that money comes out. It might be $100, $200, or whatever, and you'll be shocked that at the end of the month you still look at your checkbook or go online today, I guess, and look at it. And the reason I don't know how you do it exactly today is my wife does that. I don't get a checkbook, so or an ATM card. Not because I'm irresponsible. That's just the we've always lived that way. I've got $20 a month whether I need it or not, and so. And she's a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful lady. So if you meet her, please don't say I was talking down about her. But in any case, at the end of the month, we figured out we could still afford a pizza occasionally. Not 12 pizzas at the end of the month, but we still were there, and we had paid ourselves first. Our savings had come out, our investment had come out, and our insurance had come out. And we gradually did that over time. So the first thing we do is figure out what should be in your plan. And we've got I'm going to let out a trade secret here, so if there's any other financial advisors in the room, you might want to write this down. The way we figure this out is we ask you what's important to you. That seems to be the most simple question. So for a bunch of you, it's going to be a dream home someday. You got a house maybe up in McCall that you want to have, or on the river, or in a really nifty retirement community. For others, it's going to be travel and adventure, going to see Europe, or going to ski, or being on cruise ships. And for some, it's going to be taking care of your children, making sure they get a great education and get a great start in life. And for others, it's going to be an active early retirement, where you're able to spend time with your grandkids, or go golfing in some neat place, or take music lessons. And any time that you put this together, some of you are going to want all of those things, and that's okay, because we're going to show you exactly how you work on getting those. So to get started, the first thing is you have to set goals, and we're going to help you do that. We actually have a book in your folder today that when you get home you can look at. I'm not going to have you write on it today, but there's page 2 of that book asks you questions on the things that you would like to have. It's called a Financial Life Workbook. And it's, I think, on the right side of your folder in there. So then you have to have a plan to pursue those goals. That's where we come in. Most people can't run the plan themselves. Just as all the professional athletes out there. Tiger Woods has a coach. All the basketball players have a coach. They got a great coach here. If you've read, I know you're all Broncos fans, but Washington State Broncos fans. I happen to be a Denver Broncos fan also. But in any case, there's a book that one of my former advisors before he retired wrote about the Boise State football program. His name escapes me right now. Thought of it on the way over here. But it's phenomenal how successful your program here is, because you guys don't get 20 of the absolute best athletes coming out of high school. You get maybe one or two, and the rest are all somewhere or other, and they do it by coaching and effort and discipline, and the same things that the Wyakin Warriors teach in their program. So you have to have a plan, and then the most important thing, the absolute most important thing, and we saw at the start here, our friends that, with the Crown Royal, and they are slipping me 2 bottles on the way out to say this, so, not really, I'm just joking. But, they took action, and that's what you have to do. They took action of partnering with an outfit in the greater Idaho area, which happened to be the Wyakin Warriors, and they set up the displays, and they put money aside that came out of each sale that happened to that so that they could support this program. It wouldn't happen without the action. They could talk about it all they wanted, but until Bill set that stuff up and put it in motion and took the action to make it happen, it doesn't work. And it's the same way with this plan. So setting specific goals, you have to define your goals. There's a whole bunch of you, if I ask you your goals today, and don't feel bad if this is what you would think, and say, well, I really want to be rich, or I really want to be secure, or I really want to travel. But until you define it specifically and put a time frame on it, by specifically I mean how much money do you want to be rich? Because it's sort of like New Year's resolutions. I want to be skinny. Well, if you want to be skinny, it's a lot better if you say, I'm going to lose 15 pounds, and this is how I'm going to do that. You have a much better opportunity of making that happen. And then if you involve a coach in that, and you have some sort of personal trainer or your spouse or your workout buddy that you walk with every day and go to the gym with every day, you have accountability, much more opportunity for success. When you just say, I'm going to lose weight this year, I can tell you that I'm guilty of this. I have been more svelte than I am today at some point in my life, although I still consider myself pretty svelte. But in any case, it's all in the eye of the beholder, obviously. You got to have a time frame to do that. So we're going to set your goals up this way. We're going to have short-term goals, which are 1 to 5 years, and most of that's going to be fixing the cash management side. Then we're going to have midterm goals, which are paying off longer debt, maybe putting money aside because your children are going to go to college well before you retire, potentially, if you have your children relatively young. And then we're going to have the long-term goals, which could be your children's college, but it's almost always your travel and adventure when you're older, your retirement, and things of that nature. And then we're going to set a dollar amount. What do each of those things cost? And we're going to be your counselor on that, if you will. Todd back here in the back is our local advisor, and Mike is our district advisor that covers all of Idaho and all of southern Idaho and all of Utah and most of Nevada. They're going to sit with you and make sure that we do the right thing. We have programs that give you every college tuition there is and what it is today, and we factor in how much is that going to inflate. So we can determine for you how much money you need if you want to pay half or all of your children's college. If you want to retire and you want this level of income that you have today, whatever that level is when you retire, we'll factor in what we think Social Security is going to be, what the rest of your retirement stuff might be if you have 401ks or retirements, etc. And we'll figure that stuff out. So they have to be goals that matter, and they help you overcome procrastination. Every study we do says when you have a goal that's important to you. I had a picture for 15 years of my time frame as a client of a Corvette that I was going to have someday. It wasn't an exact picture, but it always reminded me when we were investing money and my buddies were giving me crap about not having a cool car, and they all 5 of us in flight suits would climb into what we called the clown car, which was my Geo Metro. We could get 5 adult males in there in flight suits. It increases your motivation when you know where you're going, and it improves your chances of achieving goals. So that family life workbook I talked about looks like this, and we're going to have you work on that on your own, and then you're going to have the opportunity when you fill a card out at the end, because we'd like to get your comments, and there's a little card about this big in there. You say, how do we make this better, which you can do at the end, and it says, I'd like to be contacted. Even if you don't think a financial plan is right for you now, you know somebody who it is right for, that's ready to get started, that's asked you a question. So mark down yes, tell Todd to call you and say, I have a friend that I'd like to introduce you to if it's not you. Because you're given a tremendous gift. Our clients start like me. We had $1,500 in the bank, a little bit of debt, and 30 years later, we have all the things that we put on our list, because we stayed the course when we did that. And that's the type of gift you're giving people by giving them a financial plan. Because most of the people that are in middle America, when you say, can you afford a financial plan? They all say no. We say, we know you can, because we work with you and we figure it out from the start. So when we built that financial plan, it has three parts to it that are really important. First, it has to be personalized. It's about you. Some of you may not want a Corvette. Some of you may want like a Mustang or some non-kind of sports car. He's giving the Ford guys a hard time here. It needs to be flexible, because life's going to change. If you're 30 today and you think you want to live in Boise in your dream home, and 20 years from now you decide, man, I love Boise, but it's a little cold in the winter, and I sort of like to live where it's warmer now. And so could we change our retirement home to Florida or Arizona or somewhere like that? It needs to be flexible so we can do things like that. And then most of all, it has to be comprehensive. So what does comprehensive mean? Well, it has to address three cornerstones. And if you'll notice, in the center here is the financial plan. And the three cornerstones that First Command believes in is cash management, which we're going to talk about first, then risk management, and then we're going to talk about the fun and sexy one, which is wealth accumulation and management, which some people are going to call investing. The reason I call that the fun and sexy one is everybody in the room will come talk to me about that. I had almost 40 minutes with the Wyakin Warriors today. None of them asked me about insurance. They all asked me, she mentioned insurance, but nobody else was interested. They're all asking about how do we invest and how do we do this, because that's the cool part. That's the part you tell your buddies about or your friends at the bar. Yeah, I made 22% on my such and such last year. So let's talk about cash management first. First thing we're going to do is work your budget. And as I told the Wyakin Warriors when I met with them earlier, you'll be shocked when we take your budget apart. We're real nice about it, but we're going to ask you specifics. Things like, how often do you stop at Starbucks? There are people spending $350 a month at Starbucks. Every day I see them, every day. There's people who stop on the way to work every day and pay $5, and then 3 or 4 days a week get another cup of coffee at Starbucks sometime in their work environment. So just one person in a relationship's got 8 cups of Starbucks a week. Let's just call it $5. That's $40 times 4 weeks is $160 just for that person. And if there's 2 adults in that household, it might be double that. But I've seen people as high as $500 or $600. We're also going to work on savings, and we're going to work on making sure that you have an emergency savings that's there to protect you so that you don't ever have to be in debt. So that you plan ahead of time. We're going to partition that savings into emergency and cash purchase, so that you gradually build that over time, so that you know when you need a washer or dryer or transmission fixed in the car, that we're not putting it on a 15 or 20% credit card that's out there. We're going to manage that debt. We're going to do a debt consolidation schedule if you have debt, and we're going to work that down in the most efficient manner there is, where we pay extra against the thing we can get done first that has the highest interest, so that we can take the payment from that and move it to the next bill that we can get rid of. And we'll actually print out a schedule for you that shows you exactly how that's going to happen. And what it does for most of you the very first time is you go, there is an end in sight, that we can be debt-free on this stuff. Now that isn't your house payment. It may not be your 7-year car payment that you have, and if that's low interest rate, that's generally good debt. So here's why we're going to spend so much time on debt. How many of you have ever gone to a furniture store where they offer 0% financing? And you buy a bunch of couch and love seat and end tables and maybe a lamp and a bedroom set, and you got $5,000 on there, and you're 1 day late, 6 months into that interest-free deal. It goes back to the very start, and you know the whole interest, and depending upon the state, it could be as high as 26.9 interest. We're using a 15% example, making the minimum payment of $125. It takes almost 5 years to pay off this $5,000 balance, and you've paid at that time approximately $2,000 of interest. For those of you who are math majors in the room, $2,000 out of $5,000 is how much percentage? It's approximately 40% that you paid over that 5-year period of time, because you were making the minimum payments. And it's because it keeps compounding on the piece that's your debt all the way along. So we're going to fix that part. Then we're going to go to risk management. I want to make a point about risk management. It's all different types of insurance. I'm going to talk about them, but you see up there it says it equals Plan B. plan A is that you never need any of this stuff. That you don't ever get hurt where you can't work, you never need long-term care, you never die early or any of those things. So plan B is if some of those eventualities happen to you earlier than you thought. So we're gonna look at property and casualty. We're not necessarily going to replace what you have, but we're gonna make sure you have the right stuff. There's people in the room here that have the Idaho minimum on collision, and yet they might be very wealthy. They slide through an intersection in the winter, hit a van with some kids in it, and the insurance company pays $50,000, which is the minimum. You owe everything above that. Well, if you're young and you don't have very much money, there's nothing to sue. You can't sue a stone, you're not gonna get anything. But if you're further along in your life and you have a whole bunch of money, and you still got the basic minimum insurance, you don't have the right amount. So we're gonna make sure you're right on that. We're gonna manage the risk to your earning eligibility, which is disability insurance. We're gonna manage the risk that you'll need extended care, which is long-term care. And we're gonna manage the risk to loved ones should you die. I'm gonna give you an example now of a live client of ours who sat down with us years ago, and her husband that you're gonna hear about was Todd Farrington's roommate at West Point. And it's a very poignant story, it takes about 3 minutes to tell, but it's gonna be her words.
Bill and I met at West Point, where he and my brother were classmates, and I went to my brother's graduation, and I wanted a partner to go to the dance for fun. And we hit it off, we were blind date, we had a really good time, and a year later we were married.
He was an amazing guy. He was brilliant. English professor at West Point before he went to Command and General Staff College and then eventually came to the college.
Bill would call himself eclectic, I called him a Renaissance man. And to learn more in literature, more in sports, more different things, gave him ways to connect with people in their life.
Bill was always into reading and wanting to give his children and his family the broadest views of what his experiences were. Rochelle and Bill have four children: Allie, Tori, Lily, and Bill.
He was fun as a father. He loved being a dad. Family was very important to him.
Young officers, they flocked to him because of his personality. He was well educated, he had a great family life, he was a sports fan, and he drew every population of young Army officer to him.
He specifically told me, I am not going to hide behind a desk. I'm not going to send other people to harm's way and stay behind. I will go out with my soldiers and do what I'm asking them to do.
The day that they deployed to Iraq, one of the comments Bill made was, it's a comfort to know that if something were to happen to any one of us, Samantha would be back here taking care of our families.
We were on patrol. There were 5 vehicles in the patrol. Me and my team was in the second vehicle. Bill and my headquarters battery commander and 3 other soldiers were in the third vehicle. There's just this tremendous explosion. It was an improvised explosive device which killed everybody instantly.
Get home and life is fine, and the baby's asleep in the car, and you take him out, you put him to bed, and you tell your older daughter that she can take the dog out, and when you walk to the door, they're standing there. You know the uniform protocol, you know which uniform means he's injured, which uniform means he's not coming home.
One of the first things that goes through a military leader's mind is financially, am I going to be okay? And it felt great to be able to sit there and tell her, yes, you are. You and Bill did everything right.
Bill was very focused on taking care of his family, as we both were.
He was quite a long-term thinker in the aspect of taking care for the future.
The military has a term life insurance policy. We also have whole life insurance policies.
BK's now with life insurance. Rochelle was able to relocate their family to the Colorado area. She would have had to go back to work, but she's been fortunate enough not to. If they come in and there's a financial issue, I'll never tell a client to stop paying for their insurance. To me, that's the most important thing.
Life insurance is important because life is the only thing that we know isn't going to be forever.
If Bill had not been so prepared for the possibility of his early death, Rochelle and the kids would be struggling. They wouldn't have those abilities of just not worrying.
This is something you can do so your family can live their life to the fullest.
Talking about life insurance is probably one of the least favorite things to do, but it's the most important. Because there's never a if I'm gonna die, it's a when I'm gonna die.
I'm proud of what he did. He didn't put himself in harm's way for other people knowing what he was doing. So, yeah, there's pride in what he did.
So we have a personal connection with the Hecker family. I know them, they live in Colorado, and they are doing very well because of the planning that they put in place. And I don't want you to think if you're not military that makes this less of an important cornerstone. It probably makes it more important, because most of the jobs that people have in the civilian world don't have the level of benefits, death benefits, should a person pass away. So one of the advantages of coming in and having a plan is we have a tool that Todd takes you through. It's called the Survivor Needs Analysis Profile. And it's designed to let you author exactly what you want to protect and know exactly what the number is to the dollar of what you would need to protect. And some things you're going to say, I don't need to protect that because my parents are going to pay for my children's education, or other things like that. So we had the good fortune of, even though we had this strategy, I know the advisor, I know the battalion commander very personally, and I know the family, and Todd knew Bill very well, that they are safe and sound and successful and as happy as they can be without him, because they don't have any of the worries that so many families have when they don't have those safeguards in place. Thank you. So it's important that you have the right amount of insurance. That helped lighten the mood a little bit. That was good. It's important that you have the right amount and the right type. And most importantly, first and foremost, is the right amount. And that's what you'll always get recommended by us, even if initially it isn't the right type. And there's really just two types. There's temporary insurance and permanent insurance, and everything else in between is a mix of those. The thing that I want you to be sure of is you don't assume that what you have at work is either the right amount or the right type. Most Americans have what they get from work. And the way that works for the employer is they can give you 1 times your pay without any tax implications. If they give you more than 1 times your pay, then you have to pay tax on it as a gift received, basically, as income. So whatever the premium is. So some places have great plans where you can select 5 times your income, and if you make a big income, that may be enough insurance. But if that's all you have, more than likely it isn't enough, and it may not be the right type. And you'd rather know and then choose to take action or not, rather than not know and hope and wish that it's right. And so if you're going to do nothing else but come in and scope that cornerstone out, that's what you should do with Todd. So the next one, the one I said was sexy and fun, is the wealth accumulation and management. The real issue here is investing with a purpose. This is what happens. I told you I'd give you a 20-year deal of the S&P 500, and everybody's pretty much heard of the S&P 500. Most people don't even know what it really means, but it's the 500 largest companies in the United States. And so if you're going to invest in an S&P 500 index fund, if Google is 5% of that total capitalization, what all those companies are worth, then that fund will own 5% of their holdings in Google, all the way down to the 500th company where they only own a little bit of. It gives you diversification among that whole group. So if you invested in the S&P 500 over the time frame of 91 to 2010, so that included the crash of 2000, 2001 with the World Trade Center bombings, and the Pentagon bombings, and all of the downtimes in there, and you just let your money ride during that time, the S&P 500 return is 9.14. Those are the people that were dollar cost averaging, buying and holding. What did the average investor get during that time? They got 3.83. And the reason they did is most of the investors do not have a financial planner to hold their hand in the downtimes. They're doing it on their own, and they invest on emotion. And they then take their money out on fear. And it's standard psychological terms. When there's euphoria and the market's going up, all their friends are buying and they get in. so they just bought high. And then when it goes down and they have their 8,000 or 10,000 that's now worth 6, and then 4, and then 3, they say, we've got to get out now. And part of the reason is they don't have anyone else to blame. I don't even do my own financial planning. I have a financial planner within First Command that does mine, because I don't want to have to tell my wife I'm the one that gooned it up. So I have a planner to say, hey, what are we supposed to do here? And that way she can ask him what happens. So here's how much it means when it's over that 20-year period of time. For short periods, it doesn't mean a big deal, $2,000 or $3,000 difference. But when you take the whole 20-year period of time, that 9.14 versus 3.83 on $10,000 means almost $40,000 more money. So we want you to invest in with focus, and that focus is investing and growing your money over time with an effort to achieve those specific goals we talked about. The first one might be retirement. The reason we put that first is we know that almost everybody will retire at some day. Not everybody's children are going to go to college, so maybe college would be first for some of you, but you can use retirement money for college, so you can have a kind of a dual purpose deal, because we know for sure you're going to retire, but maybe both your children get accepted to the Air Force Academy or Naval Academy, or junior college like West Point. Taught a hard time back there. The second focus is education for your children. That was one of my wife's most important goals for us. I had to argue with her every time we went to a meeting, because I wanted retirement first and she wanted education right there with it. And if we couldn't do both, she said, I'm not willing to do the retirement one. And that comes from how she was raised versus how I was raised. My dad said, there's a world out there, you can go get it. And that's why I went to the military, to get the military, the benefits for college. You may have a major purchase or event that we focus on when we do that. Or you may have a career transition, or you may want to start a business. All of those are focused efforts to grow money to a specific amount on a specific time schedule to get you where you want to go. And we're going to build that with that flexibility we talked about, and we're going to have it so that we know that there's going to be changes along the way. So what happens beyond the plan? Do we just come in and make a plan? No, a financial plan by itself offers no assurance of success. Just having a plan that goes back to that New Year's deal. You write down, I'm going to do 20 pull-ups, I'm going to do 50 sit-ups, and I'm going to run 1.5 miles every day. But it's raining tomorrow. So we go, well, we'll start Friday. It's cold Friday, so then it's Monday. And eventually it's 2 weeks and you don't even remember what the plan is that you were going to do. Same thing with the financial plan. So when we deliver the plan to you, because that's how we do it, we meet with you to actually deliver the plan and help you with the execution. That should be the beginning of your relationship for life with a financial planner, not the end point. So we're going to coach you along the way, and I'm going to show you how you do that. We're going to ensure the proper execution. What I mean by that is pretty scary out there when you go online to buy investments or insurance or anything else, because the only thing you can be sure of online is that there's a lot of stuff. There's no way to determine whether it's accurate. There's no Snopes site to determine whether this is a great investment or this is a great insurance product. You just have to kind of trust that whatever website you found yourself on, because this is what they ask you. Do you have access to the internet? Did you have the opportunity to read the prospectus? Any of you who haven't ever read a prospectus, I'd be happy to provide you one. It's not light reading, and I guarantee you that if you go more than 2 pages without falling asleep or saying, I don't understand what's in here, then you're probably in this business already, because you really have to study those things to know what they say in there. You don't even know which class of shares you might be buying in the thing, and there's 3 or 4 different sections. So a financial planner explains all that stuff to you. We modify that plan as your goals change and your life changes as we go forward. And we continually encourage and reinforce those productive financial behaviors. See if you hand that for me. And we hold your hand in the tough times, because that's the most important thing that the financial planner does for you. Is you decide, man, we got to get out. We got to get out now. We got to go to cash. Bloomberg says when I'm on the treadmill in the morning, because I am doing my exercise thing, that we got to get out. We got to go to cash. Well, we're going to teach you call us. And we're going to talk you down off that ledge. We're going to say, That's guaranteeing your loss. If you sell now, it's locking in the loss. So here's what happens. Here's what the time takes. First of all, we set goals. That takes maybe a day, or an hour and a half, or 2 hours. If you're a married couple, we'd like to have both people there. Then we build the plan. It takes us maybe a week. Then we implement the plan. We do that in another appointment. And then we go on to the future. And we execute that plan, and the execution is, once we've given you the recommendations, we help you with the applications, we help you with the bank drafts, we do the paperwork, we get the stuff notarized that you need notarized, and then for years and years we coach you. I had 17 advisors over the last 32 years. I moved 17 times in 21 years. And so we have advisors all over the country to be able to work with you, and that's the purpose, is to sit with you face to face. So it should be a lifetime deal. And I want you to know, it doesn't cost anything. When you first meet with us, it's absolutely free. In many cases, we never ever charge any kind of fee at all. We get paid through commissions on the products that we recommend. In most cases, some of them we get paid almost nothing on, but we're building advocates for the future. And every new client we start has 2 or 3 friends that they want to give a gift of financial success to. Our company is one of the few companies that actually has a dream. And our dream, I was part of creating it, and it's creating abundant lives. And that's what our goal is. And our mission is, it probably affects everybody in this room. It's 10 words that those who serve in their pursuit of financial security. So whether you're a teacher, a firefighter, a military person, a federal employee, a doctor, a nurse, just about any occupation you can imagine, when you're middle America, you're somebody who serves everybody else. And that's who we choose to work with, as opposed to other companies. So you can delay, but time will not. There's a card, like I talked about in your packet. I'd like everyone to fill that out, even if they don't want to be commented or contacted, so I can get your comments and know how I can make this presentation better. And we don't want you to be one of the people that's waiting for that perfect moment. I have a saying I use sometimes in high-level strategy meetings, so some of you can use that when you're in the next big strategy meeting. We think about our decisions so long that if we were playing golf and we were lining up a putt, before we actually brought the putter back for the backstroke, the greenskeeper had moved the hole already. So we have to start all over again. So I don't want that to be you. So if you don't have a plan in place today, don't use one of these things. Just say you want to be contacted, and we're not ever going to contact anybody that doesn't want to be contacted. It's not going to cost you anything to come see Todd, except a little bit of your time. And you're going to decide at the end of that, is now the right time for me to have a plan, or do I need to just work on getting ready for a plan? Because most of our clients, a third at least, maybe that's not most, but a whole bunch of them, the first 6 months that we work with them is just getting them prepared to actually get started with a plan. So that we worked on a budget, because they really didn't know what it was. And we worked on getting the rest of their stuff together so we could see what they had. So the bottom line is, are you going to be one of the people who continues down the freeway with the other 90% of Americans that are not going to have enough money at retirement, or are you going to take the exit to your financial future by getting a plan and working on it and sticking to it for a long period of time? We know the Wyakin warriors are on that plan. They want to have that level of success, and they're getting that discipline and education and things to make them more employable, to be able to do better things in their life going forward. And the same thing holds true with their financial situation. I'd like to thank you all for attending, and please fill out your card and turn them in, and I'm open for any questions you might have.
What color is your car bed?
It's silver.
Silver. All right,
Yes, sir.
So, for example, I'm a recently retired warrior, and when you sit down with them, or Todd sits down with them, they don't know. So what is that rule of thumb? It used to be 10% of your income is, and I know you put 20%, and that's, I would consider that pretty high for some of these young guys. But initially starting out, I mean, what is that that number?
Well, the 10% you refer to is the investment cornerstone, and that's what most people that talk about finances, that's the only piece of the cornerstone they talk about. And they say, you should put 10% away toward your future. We agree with that 10%. Now, I started with a lot less than that, and almost everybody does. We have people that start with as low as $25 or $50 that we find in their budget as we go forward. And then we plan for 6 months later, there's gonna be another $25 and another $25 over time. To answer your question simply, the reason we use 20% is the other two cornerstones are every bit as important. I would argue that for the first 30 years of your life, if you're gonna be the standard American family with a spouse and some children along the way, the insurance cornerstone is the most important. And the reason it's the most important is you can't build the assets fast enough. So if you have, and every day, I mean, you can look in the Boise paper, I look in the Colorado Springs paper where I live, every day there's somebody that drifts up the intersection and gets T-boned by somebody and dies in a car wreck. And it's not the 79-year-old guys every day. It's a whole bunch of 35-year-old guys with families. And in most cases, their surviving family isn't nearly in as good a shape as they would have been if they'd had a little bit of planning. So that's why that other 10% is there, 5% toward savings and 5% toward life insurance. Did that answer your question?
We've got a little bit of a, I guess, becoming accustomed now at the end of it with PDS is that we give back to people who give their time. Usually you can't say that you put a dollar amount on the information that people bring to us, but I think in this case, in 20-some odd years, there will be a dollar. So don't wear this with the top down on your Corvette, because it might disappear. Here's a Wyakin hat.
That's awesome.
And you get a much more comfortable polo than what I was originally given.
Thank you very much, Nick.
Earlier you coined us, we're coining you. So thank you again for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
And providing this awesome
Thank you very much.
presentation.
That's an awesome point. Thanks.
Cool.